Um, and with that, the panel is concluded, and we're about to start the Q&A. Unfortunately, Kathy is running off to another Zoom meeting, so very much appreciate you joining us for giving your remarks. It was such a wonderful way to start this panel today. So yeah, just to start the Q&A, you can use the chat, the question and answer feature on Zoom, which I think is under the 3 dots, the more side of things, or if you're on our Facebook live stream, you can write a comment on there, and we have somebody who's gonna be collecting those and sending them to the panelists. But before we begin our discussion and Q&A, we do have a couple announcements. As Erwin said, in order to build the biggest and strongest anti-imperialist and anti-war movement, to strengthen these links between US and Pakistan and Afghanistan workers and beyond, well, we actually do need more revolutionary socialists, and we need revolutionary socialists for building organizations where they are. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Regina, who's going to give an announcement for Socialist Resurgence, and then I'm going to give an announcement about the BRS as well.
Thanks, Reed. Yeah, so on September 18th in Hartford, Connecticut at Bushnell Park, we're having an event, and environmental racism, a climate emergency town hall. So that's from 2 to 4 on September 18th. There should be a link in the chat for that if anybody in the area is interested in that. We also have regular classes on revolutionary literature. So if you're interested, please contact Socialist Resurgence if you would like to attend those. Those are public classes. So yeah, go ahead, Reed.
Yeah, thanks, Regina. So the Boston Revolutionary Socialists are building a local collective in Eastern Massachusetts that can collaborate with other forces and build a stronger movement for revolutionary socialism and liberation. Our collective serves to share our individual work and struggles, train ourselves in socialist politics, and organize among a wider layer of working people. So we meet every other week on Tuesdays. So our next meeting is this Tuesday, where we'll be continuing our discussion of a revolutionary socialist perspective on Palestine. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat again. So if you're, you can visit that link to sign up and get in touch, and we'll be in touch for, you know, really any, both that meeting and future meetings as well. And Regina, back to Regina.
Thank you. Yeah, lastly, we just want to mention that we are both groups affiliated with the Revolutionary Socialist Network. So that's a project built meant to build a nationwide revolutionary socialist grouping, bringing together different tendencies and traditions of the revolutionary left. There should be a link in the chat if you'd like to get involved or look more into that larger group that we're both a part of. So with that, we could begin the Q&A session. I have some questions I could throw out there right now if that's okay. So yeah, we have a lot already. So here's one. What role did Afghan women play in opposition to the occupation? As what role are they playing in opposition to the Taliban? And then I'll give 2 questions, that way speakers can kind of address what they'd like. So clearly what's happening in Afghanistan has a wider regional impact. Can anybody discuss more in depth the role of Pakistan and India? So speakers want to get on, just say your name.
Okay, and there are some questions in Q&A, which is asking about the condition of the peasantry in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province next to Afghanistan, and also what our work in Pakistan and Afghanistan and the linkages. So I'll speak about that as well. But first, I would say that Pakistani ruling classes used Taliban's victory as a victory against India, because Indian ruling class had close association with Ashraf Ghani. So Pakistani government were glorifying this, that India has lost. So they always try to find ways to promote Indian enmity inside Pakistan. And that's what Indian would do also. And they are saying that Pakistan has provided all sort of support to Taliban, and also recently in Panjshir, where Pakistani drone were used. So I would say, as earlier Bill has said as well, about Pakistani ruling class has created Taliban in the 90s in a mishope of a strong government after killing of Najibullah, when there was a successive Mujahideen government for 3 years. So they brought Taliban from Quetta and other areas, and they strengthened them, gave them money and all that, and that's how it was People's Party in power. Benazir Bhutto was the prime minister at the time, and a military general was the interior minister, a military former military general. But in the recent period, it was mainly the ideological comradeship of Pakistani Taliban with the Afghan Taliban, who went to fight with Afghan Taliban from Pakistan. And Pakistani government was not able to stop them, not able to prosecute them. But it was not like the state was offering direct help to Taliban, but it was more of Pakistani fundamentalists who are ready to give their life for Islamic revolution. So they were going to Afghanistan, and we know many in our area, those Pakistani Muslims who lost their lives in Afghanistan fighting with the Taliban and so on. So in that sense, Pakistan and India both are exaggerating against each other to make their own point. Second is, how about our work in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? Now, as I was introduced as Haquq-e-Khalq movement, which is people's rights movement, but I am general secretary of a peasant network called Pakistan Kisan Rabta Committee, which was established in 2003. And it is a network of 29 farmers organizations throughout Pakistan. And 7 of them are from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And we have regular visits. And we had a good peasant movement in the 70s in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Although Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is taken over by religious fundamentalism, but there is a class base to fight inside Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well, which we are trying to have our own units and meetings. And we are regularly in touch. We are visiting them. And also, we are also building the Pakistani left in close association with the Afghani left. And I would also mention that Swedish Left Party, where I had a friend, gave us some funds for 5 years to organize joint meetings of Afghanistan and Pakistan left. So meetings were organized in Lahore and also in Kabul. So we both were visiting each other and we got very close, and that's how we got very close to Rawa and also to Solidarity and several other groups which are not part of these 2 groups as well. So we tried to build a close link with the Afghan left, but the left in Afghanistan was not strong at all. And they were really limited to groups, mainly in Kabul, not in other areas. Although we have some Afghan refugees with left background who has tremendous sacrifices against Taliban, against Soviet Union. They were fighting against Soviet Union at that time. Then they fought against Mujahideen. Then they fought against Americans. Then they fought against Taliban. So they have been always fighting. And these were mainly associated with the Revolutionary Association of Afghan Women. And we still are now in contact, printing their stories in our daily paper online, and also trying to help some of the Afghan refugees who have come to Pakistan. And there is no other way apart from building an independent left movement based on the working class inside and also inside Afghanistan, and linking with South Asian countries in Nepal, in India, in Bangladesh, in Maldives, and Sri Lanka, and so on. That's what we have been working for the past period, to build linkages among the socialists in all these South Asian countries.
Thank you, Farooq. That was a great
Kevin?
response. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Pakistan-India dimension. So just kind of reiterate what I had said in my talk about the Taliban. So both Pakistan and India are have been very focused on creating relations with the Afghan government, kind of opposite sides, where the Pakistan was and is funding the Taliban, and India was carrying out major infrastructure projects, as much as there have been major infrastructure projects, with the purpose explicitly of maneuvering through these, outmaneuvering Pakistan through these projects. And I think that it's kind of significant that as the Taliban came back into the leadership of the government in Afghanistan, India has started carrying out practice, which is the major contention between the two countries, and which they jointly occupy. So this is like a kind of just one part of the regional global conflicts that we are seeing on the international level in all sorts of different spheres. So then with regards to the Taliban, somebody in the chat had mentioned, and I assume this is true, I don't know, but that Dar was killed by a member of the Haqqani network. The Haqqani network is one of the
we can't hear you properly.
Yeah, we were breaking up a little bit, Erwin.
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
No, it's
okay.
better.
All right, sorry about that. So anyways, I was just saying that somebody in the chat was saying that, and I don't know if this is true, but whether or not it's true, it's part of the dynamic of the Taliban that Mullah Baradar was killed by a member of the Haqqani network, which would mean that two forces within the Taliban are kind of conspiring against each other. The Haqqani network is very close, as the commenter said, with the Pakistani government. Specifically, that relationship was cultivated in the 80s around interventions in Kashmir. So this whole regional kind of dynamic is really important to understanding the situation. And I think that we can't expect that just because the Taliban is one government right now, that it will stay unified for a long period, because there's a lot of internal and external forces bearing down on the whole situation. And so this is a real opening, potentially. So I'll just leave it at that, and let the other panelists speak, and then I hope we can talk more about kind of the revolutionary situation and the uprisings of women and things like that, and further rounds. Thanks.
Thanks, Erwin. Yeah, I believe Bill wanted to answer as well. Bill, I don't think non-panelists are really capable of speaking except in the chat. If I'm wrong, someone correct me. Yeah, okay. But go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to come back briefly to Farooq's last comments, which I found really interesting. First of all, although Erwin had done it to some extent in his talk, I think most of us now are used to thinking about Afghanistan-Pakistan relationships, but it's really an incomplete picture until you bring India into the configuration, which which has been done now in the discussion, and I'm finding it really important. One of the ways it's important is that it brings home to me the degree still to which political conflict, even class conflict in this part of the world that we're talking about takes religious form. I mean, it's an obvious point to make, but it's so pervasive. And I mean, we can't talk about India without talking about the Modi government. You can't talk about the Modi government without talking about a tradition of Hindu nationalism that has its own deeply racist and deeply violently right-wing component, a fascist component. And I mean, a lot of people that I get in political discussions with don't seem to realize that Obama welcomed Modi to the United States. A big reception for him was organized in New York and Washington, D.C., as if he were just another politician somewhere in the world.
And Trump as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so go ahead, Farouk, please.
I just said, I'm just seconding you on this point, that Trump also spoke at a rally, Modi at his home province, state, Ahmedabad. Please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I feel that you know, this is a kind of aspect of the topic that we're talking about that really bears drawing out, in part because it's not as if those of us living in the so-called West are free from the kind of emergence of far-right religious-based ideology and influence and power. I mean, if you look at the role of the evangelical Christian movement, not only in the United States, but in Brazil, I mean, Trump support among those folks, Bolsonaro's support in Brazil is just staggering. The degree to which that ideological current, that ideological is determinative. I mean, it's had huge effects, for instance, on the course of the COVID pandemic in both countries. So I don't have too much more to say just at this point. I just wanted to underline this aspect of the question of discussing the political future of Afghanistan. I think it's so important that it be carried into this dimension, and that it not just be kind of, as we tend to say these days, othered as a problem of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, but connected to a problem that we have here in the Americas about far-right political ideology and its deep-rootedness in forms of religious fanaticism.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Bill, and I appreciate you bringing it in. And actually, there's a question in the chat, you know, sort of bringing in the question of, you know, where do the American anti-war and anti-imperialist movements go now? And I think it's really important that you started with, you know, just the way that religion or class struggle has been filtered through religion here as well. So I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on answering that question about.
I would like to say on this that it is not an end of imperialist interventions. They have withdrawn for the time being. They will come back in different forms and shapes. And we cannot accept peaceful American imperialism watching people with their open eyes and not doing anything. They still want to keep that status which they had enjoyed, and I don't think Biden will keep quiet. And also the other question is that Taliban are not anti-imperialist. Taliban will never consider their fight or anti-imperialist fight. It is a fight, it was fight between the two barbarians. So we cannot give support to one against the other. Although we know what American imperialism has done in the history, but so is the new emergence of these religious fundamentalism, which has made the whole, because Taliban or Al-Qaeda or Daesh and others, they have a global agenda. They want world to be won over. They want an Islamic world. They don't want to keep themselves limited to Afghanistan. It's all the talk, nice talk at present time. We will not let any terrorists use our territory. Already when a journalist asked a question to Zabiullah Mujahid, who is the spokesperson of Taliban, that would you ask Pakistan not to carry out suicidal attacks and bombings in Pakistan? He said, Pakistan's matter, we can't intervene in it. So in fact, they gave support indirectly to go ahead to Taliban, to go what they are doing at present time. And Pakistani military establishment is in a very complex situation. On one side, they want to present Taliban as a victory against India, but they don't want Talibanization victory in Pakistan. So that's another aspect, a very complex aspect, because they have carried out military operation against Taliban, against religious fundamentalist group in Swat, in tribal areas, and they would never recently banned a terrorist fundamentalist group linked to Taliban, and so they would like Afghanis to be ruled by, but not themselves to be ruled by Pakistani Taliban. So that's where, because they are trained by British imperialism and they have some colonial traditions, and so even Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, glorifying Taliban, but would not like Taliban to have a victory in Pakistan. So that is the complexity. We have to go in it. I just like to say on the issue of poppy growing, cultivation, American imperialism spent $9 billion to compensate the Afghani farmers not to grow poppies in Afghanistan. But this was just, it was lost, because there is no way you can stop them and ask them to grow something until you stop the export of these items into European countries. You promote export, and then you're trying to stop inside. And Afghanistan, Taliban, some of the main leaders have been involved in smuggling of such items to Europe and so on. So they are not just innocent. Taliban have been involved in all sort of different crimes, as group someone has written here. But I don't think that it seems a fake news that Mullah brother has been killed in Afghanistan. There will be fighting inside, but at this time there's a euphoria, victory euphoria among the Taliban. So all these different trends have joined together. Pakistani ISI head was over a week in Kabul until and they have tried to bring them together. There will be some contradiction, but we should not count the internal contradiction of Taliban, that will be some sort of good news for us. We should be really building alternative to Taliban and also to the American imperialism.
Thank you, Farouk. There's two questions that are very similar to each other. So someone asked, can you speak on China's role? And then another question was, what role might China and Russia play in the void left by the US? So I don't know if any speakers would like to address that kind of question.
Okay, I think it's a very dirty geopolitics going on at this time. Chinese are playing the most dirtiest role. They have already said they will give over $31 million aid to Afghanistan. They have hosted them officially in China, and there has been meetings inside and outside. The whole purpose is to bring Chinese into, bring Afghanis into this CPAC, this BRI, and it's the economic interest of the Chinese bureaucracy who are going all the way to help and strengthen and consolidate Taliban's victory. They are also looking in anti-American eyes, not looking what impact that would have on the world politics, on the progressive politics. China has always helped Pakistani military dictators in Pakistan. We know that history very well. They supported Ayub dictator, they supported Zia dictator, they supported, and now they are supporting Taliban. So we never ever had any illusion. And there are some Maoist group who says that China is still a communist country. It's we would say it's an emerging country. It's imperialism in the making. It is a capitalist country. It has a market economy. It has all the ingredients of profit. So how could you term China as a communist country, although this party? So we have no illusions, and we believe that China would play a part to strengthen and consolidating the Taliban government.
Kevin?
Go ahead, Erwin.
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting question. I want to circle back to a question that had been raised earlier about the anti-war movement in the U.S. and then talk about the Russia and China. So I think the first, it's not so clear to me that the United States is going to be, carrying out.
You're breaking up
Pakistan.
again.
Okay, is this better? For some reason, it's like very particular.
Yeah,
That's better. That's better.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, so it's not so clear to me that the U.S. is going to stop having some sort of military presence in Afghanistan, perhaps in alliance with the Taliban. That seems very reasonable. Actually, they've been working with the Pakistani government, carrying out drone strikes for a long time, and so I think that we do need to oppose that because they're going to look for a reason to continue. The U.S. military, as Kathy had talked about, is very explicitly being kind of retargeted to away from these counterinsurgencies and towards preparation for a major confrontation with the growing imperialist powers that are its main competition, which is Russia and China. And so there's a really urgent need, actually, not just for ending occupations in the semi-colonial worlds and the countries that are suffering under the boot of imperialism, but also for ending this buildup of the war machine to prepare to attack and create and which is ultimately, in my opinion, leading to a world war. And so what kind of anti-war movement do we need? Well, there's some examples from the movement against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is to say these coalition groups that have been organized on a national level to carry out planned actions, days of actions, mass demonstrations, organized through open assemblies where democratic discussions and the broadest possible participation of people with a mind to end the U.S. militarism can actually go through the hard talk about organizing, making demands, and having mass mobilizations and building them, right? Like, so actually going out and going, door to door to build national days of action to end the U.S. war machine, winning positions in trade unions to stop war production, to retool immediately for 100% renewable energy, for creating medical infrastructure that actually meets the needs of working people, for ending occupations not only abroad but also at home. in Black and Indigenous and immigrant communities. I mean, this is the sort of movement that we need, and I think that there's like a real social base to build it in the United States right now. So that's one part, and then the other part I wanted to talk about was the Russia and China in Afghanistan. I think it's very apparent that both Russia and China are trying to get like a leading role in not just Afghanistan, but also everywhere that they can. This has been very clear, for example, in like Syria and throughout throughout Latin America. But I think also it's not so clear how that will take place in Afghanistan. There's not like big plans for development. I mean, even with the Belt and Road, it's like pretty minor plans to actually develop some sort of like transportation infrastructure. And really what all of these great powers see in Afghanistan is like a strategic stronghold that's on the borders of Central Asia and the Middle East and South Asia. I mean, that's what they see. It's not that they see that there's like this economic utopia that they can exploit. It's that they want to make sure that their competitors don't have access to the area. And so this is like very dangerous, I think, for the people of Afghanistan, because it's like all of the worst parts of imperialism just kind of like bogging down, and then really for the big powers only having a military solution. And so really Russia and China, I think, are going to become very much aggressive and trying to keep the United States out and these sorts of things. But I don't think that they have anything approaching a solution for the Afghan people. And I think also, that they are in competition with each other as well. And so I think sometimes people can forget that. And so that's like another dimension of this whole conflict. And this is the world situation today. So.
Would any panelists like to speak on the role of Afghan women in opposition to the U.S. occupation and the opposition to the Taliban?
Could you repeat that, Regina?
Sorry. Would any panelists like to speak on the role of Afghan women in opposing both U.S. occupation and the Taliban?
Yes, I can say a few words that no one expected a spontaneous demonstration by Afghan women straight after the Taliban takeover. And we interviewed the leader of the first 7 women who went for demonstration. And they are young women, they are university students. And they made this planning on the spot that we should do. So they went to the presidential palace and they said their cameras and mobile phones were taken away by Taliban until the international media came up. So it's only Kabul where now Taliban has also a counter strategy. Since yesterday, they are organizing their own women in a whole black aspect. You could see, might have seen the pictures printed in most of the media today, where they are now countering demonstration of Taliban women against these women. So, I mean, a small group of women forced Taliban to abandon their strategies, which they carried out for last 20 years of bombing and suicidal attacks. And now their women are in the streets in favor of them. Not a single demonstration took place to welcome them. That's another important aspect when Taliban took over Kabul. So we believe it will grow because Taliban would never allow women as they want to keep them at home. That is their ideology. That is their part of their thinking. And they cannot change that. And they will not allow them working, maybe allow them working in hospitals and maybe teachers, and that's all. But they will not allow them to work in the banks, in different companies, or in private sector, and so on. And they would discourage them out. And one woman described, this is not the Kabul we know. It is different Kabul experience at the time. No woman in the streets at all. But common women will organize themselves, and I think they have taken the lead, and it will grow.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Phil said he wanted to get on staff.
Yes, just briefly, it's very, very helpful, Farouk, what you just said. My reaction to the broader question about women's participation and the situation there is that I think it's been, in some cases, to the extent that we've been able, it's even been represented to us, absolutely heroic, and that we should say that and talk to ourselves and to other people about it. I didn't know exactly that the Taliban were organizing their own women contingency, but it's not surprising, is it? Because of the power and the force that those demonstrations have had. And I will just add that there's an element of apprehension in me, though, in speaking this way, because the U.S. government, the U.S. government, I'll just stay with that, has so much capitalized on and exploited the Taliban's repression of women, and they've directed it, they've used it and directed it in along lines that those of us in this conversation, I think, need to oppose and want to oppose. And I think we need to call that out and make it clear that in expressing our solidarity and support for Afghan women in their demonstrations right now, we are not buying into the false use of that aspect of the situation in Afghanistan, or anywhere else in the world for that matter, that the Biden administration and people in the US broadly now see on their TV sets and on their computers very often. I just wanted, but it's very helpful, one other thing, I did see online this morning that the Taliban had made some kind of announcement that women would be allowed to attend universities, but they had to attend in separate classes, and there were other kind of constraints that were placed on them. That's it.
Bill, I have seen a picture of a university education, I think 3 days before. Few men sitting this side, and there is a wall of cloth wall, and then the woman sitting on the other side. And they will allow such of university, which is a joke for the university education, really. And they will say something and do something else. And that is absolutely clear. They want to consolidate their power at present time. They want people to pacify that these are good Taliban, these are not bad Taliban. But that's the mentality of Taliban is religious fundamentalism. Yeah. And religious fundamentalism is basically anti-women. And that's where we have to see the strategies of the Taliban in the light of their ideology, not in the light of what they say at present time.
I know that we've already spoken a bit about the sort of the collaborations that are taking place between the Afghanistan and the left in both Afghanistan and Pakistan, but I'm wondering, there is a question still that about the sort of state of the revolutionary left. I think mainly in Pakistan. I think Farouk, you spoke well to this sort of, unfortunately, the small size of the left in Afghanistan. So maybe you can speak more about the situation in Pakistan as well.
Yes, we are thinking at one is Afghan People's Solidarity Campaign, which is mainly directing towards the refugees, which is the most immediate task we're facing. And also a conference of the left of Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, South Asia mainly. at present time, who have directly related with the victory of Taliban, maybe on Zoom. So we are discussing that initiative as well, because we can't just keep quiet and see what is happening, something. And when 9/11 took place, we had organized Afghan Workers Solidarity Campaign, and those who came to Peshawar from Afghanistan, we provided them food, we provided them the dresses, and we sent a lot of clothes to Peshawar because it was too cold in December that year when Afghanistan was taken over. So we will organize something. At this time, 3 of our comrades are speaking in different webinars. And I just read this proposal come up also in other areas where we are floating this proposal of a joint Zoom meeting of the left, what to do, and discuss the strategies. And also, we have written the statement of Fourth International, which has been adopted, and you might have seen that it is printed in International Viewpoint. So maybe you can see some of our views are there, and it's been jointly written afterwards, but we wrote the initial draft of that. And also, so most of the international left is very eager to do something. They don't want to see this happening, and particularly they want to help the Afghan refugees, and particularly the women, and also some of the radical NGOs in Pakistan and India, which are organized in SAHAR, South Asia for Human Rights. They are discussing some initiatives in this regard, and we are working together. So the social movement and the left movement together in South Asia would be doing something in very recent future about this after discussing some planning and strategies. And I think it's very important that this webinar has taken place, and we have heard views, and it's very good that we can keep more direct contact in future, and also we can share our thoughts and strategies and see where cooperation is possible. And when Kathy was leaving, she sent me a direct message that she want to have direct contact in future as well, to keep the contact going on, which is very welcoming. So we would be happy if you organize any other thing. We would be speaking there and coordinating the effort where the left forces could do something very fruitful at present time.
That's phenomenal. That's really phenomenal.
Kevin?
Sure, go for it, Erwin.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that overview, Farouk. I don't know a lot about the situation of revolutionary organizations in I do know that there was some mass mobilization. I'll name the Student Solidarity 2018.
You're breaking up again.
Sorry. There's some mass mobilizations of students under the Student March in 2018 and 2019, which saw demonstrations in over 50 cities in Pakistan, which we were very inspired by. We made some solidarity statements, and through interviews with student leaders, learned that those mobilizations were being supported, with solidarity from other students and activists and workers in India and Bangladesh. And so this is like, it has been a real inspiration, not just because it happened, but also for how to carry out work with young people, students in the United States as professionalists. So I just wanted to speak to that a little bit, and say that like the struggles have organizational and political impact inside of the country and region, but also just like everywhere. We can all take lessons from each other, and we can. And so, like Farouk, I appreciate this panel coming together and being able to have this sort of international character.
I wanted to throw out another question in the chat from Joseph. He writes, or they write, at this point, the US's ruling class has not come up with a, quote, mass market explanation or assessment of their imperial project in Afghanistan. As yet, one does not hear a set of talking points by their intellectual spokespeople. No talk yet of, quote, noble crusade that was just unable to triumph despite best efforts of American heroes and brave allies in Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera. How might our rulers portray this war in order to prepare the American people for the next war?
Bill,
After this,
can you take this
oh,
up?
sorry, go ahead. I was going to say after
No,
this
no,
point,
Bill.
we're going to start wrapping up, but go ahead, please.
Yes, Bill, please go ahead.
Do you have some thoughts, or you want to think about it? I could respond too.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting to see the ruling class response to the withdrawal. Interesting in one sense because it was already decided last year through the negotiations in Qatar. And so now, you know, there's this whole thing. Biden is being weak. He's not carrying out our, you know, our duty to maintain our military everywhere. Blah blah blah. And so of course, it's like a bipartisan agreement. And then on the other hand, there's been a lot of opinion pieces about what this failure means with regards to the United States image abroad. Because there's this idea that people have that the United States has to be the ones protecting civil rights and freedom and democracy everywhere, and that they are actually doing that. And so when the United States ends its occupation, which had been you know, fundamentally anti-democratic and all these things, they see this as a blow to democracy. And so that's the main way that it's being framed, is that like now, and it is really like this kind of classic like civilization versus barbarism framing, where the United States is leaving, and so now any hope at like at becoming civilized is lost in Afghanistan. With regards to a larger contextual story or narrative that they'll use to explain why this justifies further military future, I don't know. I'm sure they'll think of something. Maybe it's because we didn't fight hard enough. That seems really likely. And so everything that's bad that ever happens in or around Afghanistan will be because the U.S. is actively occupying it. But yeah, those are just some initial thoughts. Thanks for the question, Joe.
Serwin, Bill wanted to make some remarks. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, well, just briefly, what the Biden administration has said in the midst of the catastrophic effort to withdraw from Afghanistan is that we went there in order to prevent a terrorist attack on the homeland, and we did it, and we succeeded. And whatever else you might say about the terms of our withdrawal or the frustrations, we achieved our main objective. And my sense is they will continue to use that line to justify whatever else they may decide to do in terms of military intervention in that region and elsewhere, though it's become, I think, less coherent for anybody who listens to the people who are saying this, you know, that this is in any way comprehensible. You know, on the one hand, they say we haven't had any attacks on the US. On the other hand, they're saying, but we need to send a drone strike to attack this particular car that may or may not be carrying explosives, under the control of ISIS-K. And that, I think that whole process will continue. I'm not saying they won't reconstruct a broader kind of military imperialist agenda that will supplement this, but I don't think they have it now. I think it's really, and that's what was so, just end with this, so depressing to me about all the depressing things about the anniversary of 9/11 is the way in which the government and the American ruling class indulged in this act of mourning, which is understandable enough, but along with that was a kind of patriotism-driven commitment to the project of keeping Americans safe from all the dark forces in the world. And to say that that leaves out, many of the most destructive imperialist activities that the US government is involved in is an understatement. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. So we're wrapping up now. So do any panelists have any final remarks they'd like to make? Farouk, would you like to?
No, it's okay. I think we have dealt the question quite good.
Okay.
Erwin?
Go ahead, Erwin.
Yeah, so I again wanted to thank everybody for taking the time on their Sunday to whether it's Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, Sunday morning, wherever you might be in the world. It's really, really wonderful to have this conversation. I think that the main points for me have been the need for one, like independent struggle of working people in the party. If that struggle needs to be necessarily internationalist, and that there's real and it's like
You're breaking up again. Sorry.
that is a victory. No, thanks, Reed. I appreciate it. I think also this whole situation and learning about the conditions and the different international factors that are happening in Afghanistan has really been a lesson to me about the fact that the world's kind of political economy is becoming so complicated with the rise of Chinese and Russian imperialism and all of these kind of struggles for power on like these more regional and local levels, whether in Latin America, Asia, or the Middle East, or Africa, or even Europe. It's really, it speaks to the need to for us as socialists and activists and militants to really kind of cut through the a lot of this nationalist rhetoric and look towards our brothers and sisters and siblings on the field, as like our real partners. And just like, it's really important to me, and I think that it's going to become something where we have to keep arguing about it on groups similar in Pakistan, but certainly in the United States, that look to various ruling classes or even the Chinese and Russian government as progressive forces in world history. And I think that like we, people that are interested in the world, need to be.
You're breaking up a lot.
Need to be resolute in saying that Russia and China are not the way forward. That's all.
Thanks, Erwin. With that, if there's no more final thoughts from the panelists, we can wrap it up. I really want to thank everybody for attending this, especially the panelists. I really appreciate your thoughts on everything. So with that, have a good rest of your weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Great productive
comrades.
discussion.
Thank you, comrades.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.